In the darkness of the 41st millennium, there are fates worse than death. Fates that gnaw at the soul, unravel the mind, and hollow a person until only endless craving remains. Today, on Lord Warhammer, we step into the forbidden shadow of the Dark Prince, and explore what it means to fall into the hands of Slaanesh, the chaos god of excess, torment, and unholy delight. Viewer beware, this tale is not for the faint of heart. I was an acolyte of the Inquisition. For years I had seen the horrors of the galaxy, the shambling husks of plague-ridden worlds, the charred remains of cities cleansed by fire, the silent void where ships vanished without trace. But nothing, not even the whispered heresies of forbidden tomes, prepared me for the moment I was dragged before the altar of Slaanesh. It began on the hive world of Seranthia Prime, a planet rotting under the weight of its own decadence. The spires reached for the heavens, while below them, billions drowned in their own filth. Whispers of a cult spread through the lower hab blocks, people disappearing, their screams replaced with laughter that didn't sound human. My master, Inquisitor Kalen, sent me and 3 others into the depths to root out the corruption. We found more than corruption. We found worshippers. The cultists were beautiful and grotesque all at once, their bodies marked with spirals of scar tissue, their eyes glowing with unnatural hunger. Some wore silks so fine they shimmered in the darkness, others were naked, painted with oils that reeked of strange spices. They moved with a dancer's grace, their blades singing as they cut down my comrades. I fought. Emperor knows I fought. But against their song, their whispers, their promises of pleasures I dared not imagine, my will faltered. A blow to the skull dropped me into darkness, and when I awoke, I was bound. Chains of glimmering silver coiled around my arms and legs, biting into my flesh but never breaking it. The chamber smelled of incense and blood, thick with smoke that seemed to crawl beneath my skin. I could hear them chanting. Glory to she who thirsts. Glory to the Dark Prince. The cult master approached, his face painted in half smiles, half scars. His voice was silk wrapped around a knife. You are fortunate, child of the corpse emperor. So many die without tasting what lies beyond the veil. But you shall be offered to the vox of desire. You shall sing for Slaanesh. My blood froze. Because I had read enough of the forbidden texts to know what that meant. It did not mean death. It meant eternity. The chamber's walls pulsed faintly, like the skin of some vast living creature. I did not know if they were carved stone, painted metal, or grown from something fouler. Every surface shimmered faintly with an oily sheen, and when the torchlight flickered, the shadows danced in ways no geometry should allow. The chains held me upright, suspended just above the ground, so my toes brushed the blackened floor. Each time I shifted, the links rasped and tightened. They were warm, too warm, as though they lived. The cultists circled me. Some laughed, some wept, some moaned with delight at the sound of their own voices. One woman leaned close, brushing her lips against my cheek. Her breath smelled of roses and rot. Do you hear it? She whispered. The vox is already singing to you. I tried to shut it out. I recited the litany of endurance, the creed of the Emperor's mercy. But beneath my words, I heard it, a faint, static hum that seemed to emerge from the walls, from the air, from inside my own skull. It was soft at first, like the crackle of a failing voxcaster, but it carried a rhythm, a cadence, a call. And God's help me, it was almost beautiful. The cult master raised his arms. His silks caught the candlelight, shimmering in shades of crimson and violet. Scars laced his chest, but they were carved with such symmetry that they looked deliberate, an art form etched into living flesh. He spoke, and his voice carried both command and caress. Before the Prince of Excess, there is no pain, no joy, no sorrow, no bliss. There is only experience, the endless spectrum of sensation. Tonight, this soul shall be opened. Tonight, he shall sing. They answered in unison, voices overlapping into a chorus that was neither harmony nor chaos, but something in between. Their chanting fed the hum, and the hum swelled until it pressed against my skull like iron bands. I clenched my teeth, but my thoughts bled away. Memories of home, of comrades, of the Emperor's light, all drowned beneath that insidious static. The cultists began to dance. Not in any pattern I recognized, but in spirals and convulsions that seemed to mock the natural rhythm of the body. They cut their own skin as they moved, tracing wounds that wept blood and ichor, yet they laughed in ecstasy as each cut deepened. I felt bile rise in my throat. And yet part of me wanted to understand. I felt bile rise in my throat. And yet part of me wanted to understand. The cult master drew closer, his hand trailing along my chest. His nails were too long, too sharp. They left faint red lines in my flesh. You fear what you do not yet know, he whispered. But fear is the seed. When the flower blooms, you will beg for what you now dread. He lifted something from the altar. At first, I thought it was a relic of the ecclesiarchy twisted to mockery. It was a mask, a jagged thing of glass and crystal, etched with veins of crimson light. The Vox Tower rises, he murmured, holding it high. And it shall speak through you. The cultists howled, their cries echoing against the chamber walls until it felt as though 100 voices clawed at my ears. He pressed the mask against my face. It burned like ice, searing my skin, and then, gods preserve me, it sank. The glass bled into my flesh, the crystal veins crawling across my cheeks, burrowing beneath my skin. I screamed. The chamber roared with approval. But even as agony consumed me, the hum became a voice. Not words. Not yet. Just a promise. A promise that there were sensations beyond comprehension. A promise that the torment had only begun. The mask fused to my skin like molten metal. I could feel it binding to me, each jagged crystal shard worming deeper beneath the flesh. My screams were swallowed by the hum. No, not a hum anymore. It was a voice, faint but clear, a whisper echoing inside my skull. Sing. That single word hollowed me. It wasn't a command in the human sense, not a voice I could resist. It was woven into me, as if my nerves themselves demanded obedience. My lungs burned with the need to cry out, yet the sound that escaped my throat was not my own. It was static. Crackling, distorted, a voxcaster shrieking through broken channels. The cultists fell to their knees. Some wept, others clawed their own flesh in ecstasy. The cult master spread his arms wide and laughed, the sound thick with triumph. He hears her. He hears. The vox of desire has claimed him. The static rumbled through me, rattling my bones, stretching my voice into impossible tones. Each vibration scorched my throat, yet it brought no relief. Instead, it split into sensations I could not separate, pain and pleasure, horror and longing, terror and awe. I wanted to die. I wanted it never to end. The chains tightened and drew me upright. They no longer felt like restraints but conduits, feeding currents into my body, amplifying the voice that spilled from me. Every nerve lit like fire. My skin became an organ of sound, trembling with each wave of distortion. The cult master leaned close, his eyes blazing violet. Do you feel it, child of the corpse emperor? The edge between agony and ecstasy. That is the gift of Slaanesh. To endure it is torment. To crave it is devotion. He touched my chest, and with that touch, the sensations multiplied. My heartbeat no longer thudded but sang, each pulse rippling through me in waves of unbearable sweetness and pain. I gasped, choking on the sound. Stop, please. But the voice within me grew stronger. No. Deeper. The cultists began to chant again. Their voices layered into a cacophony of tones, some shrill, some guttural, some so low I felt them vibrate in my spine. They slashed at themselves, smearing blood across the floor in spirals that glowed faintly under the light of burning censers. The smoke thickened until the air itself seemed alive, crawling over my skin. The chains jerked me forward, dragging me toward the altar. I saw now what lay upon it, instruments of torture, yes, blades, hooks, whips of barbed steel. But also things I could not comprehend, glass spheres pulsing with light, rods humming with resonance, coils of sinew that writhed as if they lived. The cult master chose one, a shard of crystal, thin as a needle, glowing faintly with inner light. He held it before my eyes. This is no mere tool of pain, he whispered. This is an instrument. And you are the song. He drove it into my arm. I expected blood. Instead, I felt sound. A single piercing note erupted through me, resonating in bone and flesh alike. It was pain sharper than any blade, but harmonized with something deeper, a chord of sensation that made my mind shatter with ecstasy. I screamed again, but it was no scream. It was music, twisted and broken, a melody that filled the chamber. The cultists moaned in rapture. One fell to the ground convulsing, clawing at their chest as if the sound alone had torn them open. The cult master smiled. Beautiful. Another shard pierced my other arm. Another note. Another wave of unbearable sensation. Soon my body became a living instrument, each shard a string plucked by invisible fingers. The static voice inside me rose to join it, and I realized with horror that the two were no longer separate. The voice was me. And I was the song. Time bled away. Minutes, hours, I could not tell. Each second was stretched, pulled thin, filled with countless layers of sensation. My nerves screamed, my mind fractured, and yet, part of me began to crave the next note. The cult master knew. His smile widened with every shudder, every gasp that escaped me. You see now, don't you? The Emperor offers only silence. But she who thirsts offers everything. Why resist what your soul was made to crave? I wanted to curse him. To spit in his face. To cling to the faith that had guided me through war and ruin. But when the next shard pierced my leg and the chamber exploded in harmony, my defiance drowned. I moaned. And they cheered. The torment escalated. They lashed me with whips that sang with every strike, the barbs slicing open flesh while filling my ears with symphonies. Each cut was agony made music, a composition written on my skin. They poured oils across my wounds that burned like acid yet smelled of roses, sweet enough to make me weep with longing. They pressed their bodies close, whispering promises I could not comprehend, their voices melting into the static until I could no longer tell where I ended and the song began. The mask pulsed, fusing deeper. Its veins spread across my skull, drilling into thought, memory, will. My past unraveled, my training, my comrades, my oath to the Emperor. All dissolved into the endless swell of sensation. I was no longer sure if I begged them to stop, or begged them for more. At some point, a century or a second later, the cult master placed his lips against my ear. His whisper was softer than breath, yet it drowned the entire chorus. This is only the beginning. The Dark Prince does not break his toys so quickly. You will sing until your soul shatters, and even then, the song will go on. His words were not threat, but prophecy. The mask throbbed once more. And the voice within me, my voice, no longer my own, laughed. The shards sang in me. Every nerve, every vein, every trembling fiber of my body thrummed with resonance. I was no longer a man bound in chains, but an instrument, a living choir of agony and ecstasy. Each sound was unbearable. Each sound was exquisite. And each sound was mine. The cultists no longer needed to touch me. I sang without command, without control, the mask drawing from me an endless stream of static-laced melody. My body arched against the chains, racked by waves of sensation. I begged for silence, yet dreaded it more than pain. That was when I realized the trap. The torment was no longer something done to me. The torment was what I had become. The cult master circled me like a predator savoring its kill. His eyes glowed with reflected violet light, his lips curved in triumph. You see the truth now, don't you? He said. The Emperor demands silence, obedience, denial. Slaanesh offers everything. Every pleasure, every pain, every whisper of sensation. You thought yourself strong. You thought yourself faithful. But in the end... He leaned close, so his breath caressed my ear. You begged for the song. I wanted to deny him. To spit the Emperor's creed in his face. but when the next vibration rippled through me, a note so sharp it tore my voice into ragged static, the words died. My body betrayed me, convulsing in ecstasy so sharp it shattered thought. And in that moment, I did beg. Not in words, but in the trembling gasp that escaped my lips. The cultists roared in approval. Some tore open their own flesh in frenzy, bathing in blood as though my surrender had sanctified their madness. The cult master smiled. Good. Time bled away. I no longer knew if hours had passed, or days, or centuries. Each moment stretched into an eternity of sensation. When I closed my eyes, the mask showed me visions, gardens of impossible beauty, fields of crystal where bodies writhed in eternal embrace, oceans that sang as they drowned me. But beneath the beauty was rot. Each flower bloomed with blood. Each embrace was a knife between ribs. Each song was a scream. And I loved it. That was the horror. I remembered my comrades, Garen, who fell with a blade through his throat, Sarah, whose last prayer was drowned in cultist laughter. They had died faithful. They had died human. And I had become this. My shame should have burned me. Instead, it stoked the craving. Each fragment of guilt became fuel for deeper surrender. Each memory of duty became sweeter when it shattered. The Emperor's light had abandoned me. Or worse, I had abandoned it willingly. The cult master chose his moment well. He unclasped the chains. For an instant, I collapsed to the floor, trembling, my flesh slick with sweat and blood. I thought I would crawl, fight, flee. Instead, my body writhed in withdrawal. The absence of the chains, of the shards, of the song, it hollowed me. I wept. Not from pain, but from its absence. He knelt beside me, lifting my chin with a single finger. His eyes were pits of violet flame. Do you see? You crave what you once feared. You beg for what you once cursed. That is Slaanesh's truth, the breaking of all boundaries. You are no longer servant of the false emperor. You are an acolyte of sensation. No, I whispered, though even I did not believe it. My voice trembled, not with defiance, but with hunger. He placed the shard against my chest. I arched into it like a lover's touch. The note that screamed through me was agony enough to tear lungs apart, yet it was ecstasy enough to make my soul soar. And in that moment, I broke. I begged him. Not for release. Not for mercy. For more. The cult master's laughter was like velvet over steel. He raised his arms, addressing the cultists. Behold. The flower blooms. From servant of the corpse emperor to singer of the dark prince. He is ours now, body, mind, and soul. Their screams filled the chamber, 1,000 voices clawing the air. Some tore at one another in lust, some in rage, some in worship. All of them fed the static that howled inside me. The mask pulsed with their frenzy. Its veins spread deeper, burrowing into thought itself. My memories twisted, not erased, but rewritten. I remembered kneeling before the Emperor's statue as a boy. Only now, the statue's face was shattered, replaced by 1,000 smiling mouths. I remembered swearing my oath as an acolyte. Only now, I swore it to a voice of silk and knives. The past was gone. I was gone. All that remained was the craving. Then came the visions. The mask did not show me only beauty. It showed me the truth of eternity. I saw souls screaming in the warp, their forms pulled apart and restitched into endless shapes of torment. I saw gardens of flesh where every tree bore fruit made of living mouths, whispering endless hymns of pleasure and pain. I saw palaces built from bone and silk, where demons danced in spirals that broke minds. And at the center, I saw her. Not as shape, not as face, but as presence. The Dark Prince. The eternal craving. Slaanesh. Her voice was silk and venom, thunder and lullaby. Little one, she whispered. You sang well. And you will sing forever. My soul collapsed. I thought I had known terror. I thought I had known pain. But to feel her gaze was to realize how small I was. A grain of dust. A toy. And yet, in her gaze, I felt chosen. Cherished. Desired. That was the worst of it. I wanted it. I do not know how long the visions lasted. When they ended, I lay on the altar, trembling, broken. The cultists knelt in worship, their bodies twitching in ecstasy. The cult master stood over me, his smile that of a man who had sculpted perfection. You are ready, he whispered. I wanted to ask, for what? But the answer burned in my veins before the words formed. For eternity. The mask pulsed one last time, and then it sank. Not into my flesh, into my soul. I felt it pass beyond bone, beyond blood, drilling into the essence of what I was. For a moment I screamed. For a moment I thought my body would burst into fire. And then, there was nothing. No body. No chains. No chamber. Only darkness. It was not silence. The static followed me, faint at first, then rising into an endless storm. Voices layered upon voices, laughter upon screams, moans upon sobs. A chorus with no conductor. I tried to speak. My voice joined them. My scream melted into their laughter. My laughter twisted into their cries. My identity bled into the noise until I could no longer tell which sound was mine. Time stretched. A second lasted years. A century lasted a breath. In this place, time was meaningless. This was the warp. And she was here. I felt her before I saw her. The presence that had touched me in visions now crushed me utterly. A hunger infinite. A beauty so vast it blinded. A terror so complete it hollowed me. Slaanesh. The Dark Prince. The eternal craving. She did not appear as form. She was every form. She was beauty and horror intertwined. A face of flawless perfection that melted into a maw of teeth. A body sculpted from desire that split into writhing tendrils. A whisper so sweet it shattered sanity, a scream so sharp it birthed ecstasy. She spoke, though it was not words. It was sensation, vibrating through every fragment of what I had been. You sang well. Now you are mine. I begged. Not for release. Not for mercy. I begged for her to never stop. And she did not. The garden of torment unfolded. I was cast into a realm of color too vivid to exist, where every surface pulsed like living flesh. Towers of bone and silk spiraled into skies that screamed with static. Rivers of blood sang as they flowed, each drop a note of the endless symphony. And everywhere, souls writhed. Some were stretched across endless frames of crystal, their bodies plucked like instruments, each nerve strung into melody. Some were fused together, flesh woven with flesh, screaming in unison as their agony became harmony. Some were trapped in blossoms of living meat, their mouths the petals, their voices the pollen that drifted on the air. And they loved it. That was the truth. Each scream was ecstasy. Each sob was delight. Each tear was desire. They were broken, remade, addicted. I joined them. At first, I resisted. I staggered through the garden, clutching at fragments of memory, Garen's laugh, Sarah's prayer, Kaelin's voice commanding me to endure. I screamed their names into the static. But the garden answered. Flowers bloomed before me, each petal a face I knew. Garen's eyes stared from one blossom, Sarah's lips whispered from another. Their voices called to me, not in anguish but in longing. They sang of pleasures I could not deny, memories twisted into cravings. I fell to my knees. My resistance shattered. The flowers consumed me, their petals pressing against my skin, their whispers flooding my ears. And in their embrace, I felt pleasure that eclipsed every torment of the chamber. I cried out. Not in pain. Not in protest. In rapture. The Emperor's name never passed my lips again. The torment grew eternal. I was bound to cycles of ecstasy and agony that fed upon one another without end. A whip that tore my flesh became a kiss that mended it. A scream that broke my voice became a hymn that rebuilt it. I was flayed, healed, shattered, reborn, again and again, each time deeper, sweeter, worse. And each time, I craved more. That was her genius. It was not torment to be endured. It was torment to be desired. Each lash made me beg for the next. Each flame made me long for the next inferno. I was no longer a prisoner. I was a supplicant. I loved my chains. I do not know if centuries have passed, or millennia, or a single unbroken moment. Time means nothing here. Only sensation. Only craving. Only her. When I falter, she whispers. Her voice cuts through the static, velvet and steel. Little one, there is always more. And she shows me. New torments, new delights, new horizons of sensation. I have become instrument, vessel, toy. My soul is stretched thin across the strings of her eternity. And when at last I think I will break beyond repair, she rebuilds me. For she does not discard her toys. She perfects them. I realize now that death was mercy. My comrades who died quickly, their fates were blessings. Mine is worse. For I endure. For I crave. For I will never stop. This is what it means to be taken by Slaanesh. Not to suffer. Not to perish. To crave your own torment forever. Archivum Obscurus, Inquisitorial Seizure Report. File Code, Hereticus/Slaanesh, 2237. Recorded Testimony of Inquisitor Kalen, Ordo Hereticus, Segmentum Obscurus. We recovered him, what remained of him, on the outskirts of Seranthia Prime. That alone was impossible. The cult that had seized him was annihilated when we unleashed orbital bombardment. Every spire, every hab, every sewer flooded with purifying fire. And yet, 3 years later, the men stumbled out of the ruins. Naked. Silent. His eyes black with static. The scribes shuffle in the chamber. Quills scratch parchment. I lean forward and continue. At first, we believed him a survivor. A miracle. The Emperor's hand plucking one soul from the jaws of the Dark Prince. But miracles are lies, and mercy does not exist in the eye of terror. He was not saved. He was returned. They stare at me in silence. So I tell them the truth. When the acolyte was brought before us, he bore no scars. His body was perfect, unnaturally so, skin flawless, features sculpted. He should have looked young. He should have looked healthy. But his eyes betrayed him. Behind the dark orbs, static writhed. Faces twisted in the haze, screaming mouths, moaning lips, wailing children. It was as though the entire cacophony of the warp stared through him. When we questioned him, he did not speak at first. He only wept. Not with sorrow. With longing. His tears steamed as they struck the cold floor, each drop carrying the faint scent of spice and roses. Finally, he whispered, "I crave." That was all. No testimony. No plea for salvation. No prayer to the Emperor. Only that one word, repeated like a mantra. I crave. We contained him. We studied him. For weeks, the Magi biologists probed his flesh. They found no mutations. No taint visible. His organs were pristine, his genetics unaltered. But every time they tried to test his nervous system, the machines failed. Wires melted. Circuits screamed. Vox units recorded only static shaped like whispers of laughter. And then the dreams began. The scribes woke screaming. The Astartes guarding him reported visions of gardens made of flesh. One servitor flayed itself alive, singing hymns none of us had ever heard. The acolyte only smiled. We purged the facility with fire. I thought it was over. But I was wrong. Because I still hear him. Every night. Every time I close my eyes, I hear that word. I crave. This is the fate of those who fall to Slaanesh. They do not die. They do not return. They become vectors, their very existence a hymn to her craving. The Emperor protect us. I understand now. There is no escape. Even here, in the silence of my exile, I hear her voice. The acolyte's torment was not an end. It was not even a punishment. It was a seed. And through him, through every soul taken, she grows stronger. The garden is eternal. I have glimpsed it in visions, not with mortal eyes, but through the warp's reflection. An endless palace of mirrors, each pane holding a soul stretched upon strings of sensation. Each mirror reflecting not just agony, but desire. Not just screams, but prayers for more. And she watches. She drinks. She craves. It is not torment alone that feeds her. It is the surrender. The worship. The endless cycle of pain becoming pleasure, pleasure becoming hunger, hunger becoming surrender once more. The acolyte was lost the moment he was touched. His resistance, his defiance, his emperor, all of it was fuel for her symphony. In his torment, she composed a song that will never end. And now, I fear I, too, am part of it. Because when I recall his words, when I remember the static laughter, I do not only fear it. I understand it. I crave. So this is the final revelation. To be taken by Slaanesh is not to die, nor even to suffer eternally. It is to be unmade, remade, and bound to an endless craving. To become instrument and audience in the same moment. To beg for torments you once abhorred. To become a hymn that never stops singing. And when the galaxy burns, when stars collapse, when empires fall, when even the throne itself is dust, her garden will still bloom. Souls will still scream. And they will still love it. That is the promise of the Dark Prince. That is the curse of desire without end. I crave. And so, brothers and sisters of the grimdark, we have walked the path few dare to tread. We have glimpsed what it means to be taken by Slaanesh, not death, not mere torment, but an eternity of craving. An endless garden of suffering remade into desire. This is the fate of the fallen. This is the price of corruption. In the 41st millennium, there is no peace. No respite. No hope. Only the hunger of the warp, and the gods who feed upon it. Remember this tale, for it is not only a story, it is a warning. For the Dark Prince whispers to all, and even the strongest hearts may falter when desire is offered without end. Asterisk. The Emperor's children, the cults of excess, the demons of the warp, all are echoes of this same truth. Every cry, every laugh, every broken soul strengthens the Dark Prince's symphony. And if you listen too closely, you may hear it too. Do you think you could resist? Or would you crave? Tell me in the comments, for every thought is another candle lit against the dark. Asterisk. Asterisk, this chronicle was woven with the aid of arcane engines and machine spirits of artifice, tools of the Omnissiah's gift. Yet the vision, the effort, the shaping of horror into tale, that is mine alone. Know this, my YouTube kin, what you have seen is crafted for entertainment and education, a merging of lore and imagination to bring the grimdark alive. No demon was truly summoned, no soul was truly bound. This is a work of storytelling, a warning, a lesson, and above all, a story for you, the Lord Warhammer family. Asterisk. If you have endured until now, you are stronger than most. Subscribe, so that the darkness may find you again. Until then, beware the whispers in the vox. And beware the craving that follows.